So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto awakens the half-breed of dragon. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Horst was known by all in Carvajal as a kind man who would give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. He was the village's blacksmith and was very good at his job, which was lucky since he really enjoyed what he did. He was a loving father to his 2 sons and a great husband to his wife Elaine. Horst was a giant, of a man standing roughly 6'5" at the most, but maybe he was a few inches shorter than that. His muscles were big and burly from working in the forges all day, along with tan from working outside all day. He had a thick long mane of black hair that matched his 2 coal-black eyes. Horst wore the usual attire for a blacksmith, which involved a special apron to keep bits of hot metal off of his hairy chest, though he wore short-sleeved shirts and long-legged pants with leather boots on his feet. Horst was doing something right now that most in Carvajal wouldn't do. He was hiking through the spine trying to find his old logging cabin that he had made when he was a younger man so that he could make a new crib for his wife, who had insisted that their 6-year-old son wasn't too big for a crib. Honestly, sometimes the things that woman said just mind-boggled him, but hey, he loved her so he would deal with it. Many people thought that the spine was cursed or some other nonsense like that. Horst knew differently though. He may look like all brawn and no brain, but that was far from the truth. In fact, Horst was one of the minorities in Carvajal that could both read and write. Rumors were really started by that idiot Sloan after his wife fell off one of the cliffs in the spine and died. It was tragic, yes, but that was more than likely an accident on her part that made her fall. It was spring when it happened, which meant the ice was melting, making things far more slippery. The stories about an entire legion of Empire troops disappearing, and there was also a bunch of bull in Horst's opinion. If there really were an entire legion of Empire troop coming all the way out to the boonies for gods knew what, then they probably froze to death, choosing to pack armor and spears over thick clothing and food like they should have during winter. As Horst marched up the snow-covered mountain, he could faintly see the cabin in his sights. He sighed in relief, but then he saw something that worried him. There was a light on in the cabin, and unless he forgot to put out the candles 6 years ago, that meant that there was someone inside of his cabin. Horst wasn't one to jump to conclusions too fast, though he knew that whoever it was could be dangerous or just someone trying to get out of the cold before he or she froze to death. Regardless, he had a family and couldn't afford to take the chance on if they were friendly, so he grabbed the knife at his hip just in case. Horst slowly moved in towards the cabin, straining his ears to pick up any sounds, but the wind, though not bad, was still blocking his hearing. So he got closer to try and peer through the wind. He had been a hunter for a short period in his life when he was just starting up his forge to help feed his wife and 2 young children, so he tried to use the same stealth he had when he was younger to sneak up to the house. When Horst got to the house, he rested his back to the wall. His heart was beating a million miles per hour and his imagination was running wild with him. He knew that half the things he was expecting were not even possible, but in stressful situations the mind could be a double-edged sword. Horst was by no means uneducated. He knew how to read and write, and although many of the other people of Carvajal didn't really believe in elves, dwarves, or even the dragons of legend, Horst had lived in one of the larger cities at the base of the mountains for a year and had seen magicians practicing their art in broad daylight. Like it wasn't no big thing. That was enough to cause Horst to believe in any fairy tale, so the possibility, however minimal, that there was an elf or dwarf in his cabin was possible. Horst steadied his breathing and slowly opened the door. He was holding his dagger so tight that his fingers were turning white and his eyes were darting back and forth at quick speeds, trying to find the person who lit the candle. What Horst, out of all his delusions, was not expecting was the sound of a faint cry. Horst wheeled around so fast he thought his neck would snap from the momentum. When he turned around, he saw a lithe figure lying on the ground holding a black bundle in her arms. Horst slowly approached them and looked at them. He instantly fell on his ass and scooted back as quickly as possible. The grown one was a woman of beauty unheard of in any fairy tale he had ever heard. Her face was angular and her skin a perfect pale white color. Her body was built like that of a runner, but her body was clothed in rags. That was odd, but so were the scars around her wrists and ankles. The thing that really surprised him was her ears. They were elongated and had a point at the end of them. There was only one creature Horst knew of that looked like that, and it was an elf. Horst would have continued to freak out about what he was seeing, but the faint weak cry started up again. Horst looked from the elf woman to the bundle that she had wrapped around her arms and pulled deeply into her embrace. He expected the woman to wake up to feed the child or something, but she never moved. That was when Horst noticed something that broke his heart. The woman was lying on her side, revealing her ribbed side. But the part that saddened him the most was it wasn't moving, meaning she wasn't breathing. The elf woman was dead, and that meant the child would surely not survive. Horst was a good man. Nobody could deny that, so seeing an innocent child faintly crying with stakes of tears running down the one eye that Horst could see in that blanket he or she was in made it feel like Horst's heart had shattered into 1,000 pieces. Horst did the only thing he knew he could do as a good human being, and that was gently take the child from the woman's cold embrace and to hold him close to his own warm body, causing the baby to stop shivering and stop crying a bit as well. Horst looked down on the woman. She looked perfect in every way to him, and felt sad that she would never know the joys of raising her own child. As he was about to leave, he saw a shovel in the side of the room and sighed. There wasn't anything in the cabin, besides a few tools that he used since he never stored any wood in the cabin, since when he actually used it he was strapped for cash and had to sell everything inside of the cabin to support his family, so there wasn't anything to burn that wasn't made of steel in the cabin, which made Horst feel guilty, but he sucked it up and took off his shirt and wrapped the child in it as well. I am going to take care of your mom, and then I will bring you back to Carvajal where you can get something to eat, spoke Horst as he looked down on the little guy. He felt sorry for him losing his mother so early, something Horst could relate to. The baby's golden eyes drooped a bit and he let out a tired yet cute yawn before looking back up at Horst with a small baby smile. Horst's heart instantly lit up with happiness. He gave the newborn a small hug, and then put him down in a corner where he could stay as warm as possible before picking up the shovel and the woman and walking out of the room. Horst really didn't know where to bury her, but he felt almost compelled to bury her in a small clearing out beside of his cabin. It wasn't easy, to say the least. The permafrost had already made the ground hard and the snow that was in his way really got on his nerves. But he felt he needed to do this for the small boy. After all, he was sure the boy would want to see where his mother was buried, so he could get some kind of closer one day, so this was needed. Horse breaking through the frozen ground to get to the softer, deeper earth beneath. When he thought he was deep enough, Horst grabbed the elf woman and laid her in the dirt and said a few words. He was about to cover her up when out of the corner of his eyes he saw an old oak tree with one single acorn hanging from its branches that looked like it was ready to fall. Horst would have sworn at the acorn had called out to him as he picked it from the tree and carried it over to the elf woman's body. He took her hands and placed the acorn in between them and smiled. A weird thought came to his mind as he began to bury her. From death comes new life, thought Horst, but he was sure that these thoughts were not his. He was kind of freaked out because even though he was an open-minded person starting to have thoughts that were not you own still scared him, so when he was done burying her he said a quick prayer and went back to the house. When Horst returned to the cabin he saw the baby was asleep, so he quickly scooped him up and began to trek back down the mountain towards his house. He knew he would have a lot of explaining to do when he got to his home, mainly with his wife, but Saint like him, his wife had a heart of gold and he knew she wouldn't put the child out to die even if he wasn't human. The one thing that did worry Horst was the way the rest of Carvajal would react to the infant. They were more superstitious than most people and their stories about the elves were not so nice. He feared that they might try to hurt or even kill the boy, though with the weight he carried. In the village he was sure they would be very cautious if they did try, and the other thing is even if they didn't try and harm him he would still be the village pariah. He was different and that wasn't good when around narrow-minded people. The people of Carvajal were good strong-willed people, but they were ignorant too much of the world and that was dangerous. He could only try and talk to them and hope that they would grow to accept him. On the thoughts of danger, what they did know about the Empire was it wasn't allies with the elves and was in fact enemies. Horst stopped in his tracks and thought back to the scars around the woman's wrists and ankles. He was starting to think that she wasn't just in a bad place at the wrong time but in fact was on the run from the Empire. But if that were true, then why would she have a child? The thoughts on that subject were too cruel and evil for him to even think on, and he shed a tear knowing just how evil some people truly could be. He looked down at the child and swore to always protect him. It was the least he could do if what he believed was true. There was of course the problem of people telling others of the child, which would undoubtedly get back to the Empire, which would mean occupation by Empire soldiers looking for the boy. He didn't want that for the ones he loved, and definitely not on a newborn baby, so secrecy would also be a factor. That meant he wouldn't be allowed to see the traders, one of the few highlights of their small town, which would definitely sadden him. The more he thought about it, the more sorry he felt for the boy. He was an innocent newborn who was an enemy of the Empire just because he was part or full elf. Horst still wasn't sure, inside of the Empire. Growing up would be rough to say the least. As Horst entered the village, he got the usual "Hey, how are you?" from the locals, who he returned with a strained smile, but when he saw them looking at the bundle in his arms, he would try and cover the sea. Held up even more with his large muscles so nobody would accidentally see his abnormal features. As he was walking, he saw an old friend of his walking through the village with a sad look on his face, a bundle much like the one he had in his arms. Horst could see his friend needed someone to talk to, so he walked up to him and greeted him like he always did. "Hello Garo, what's with the long fac?" asked Horst as he walked up to Garo. When Garo looked up and saw it was Horst, he gave him a strained smile and a nod of the head in acknowledgement. "Hello Horst, it's nothing really," spoke Garo as he was about to turn around and walk away when he stopped in his tracks and looked back at the bundle in Horst's hands. "Where did that come from?" asked Garo. Garo wasn't the gossip type, but he knew Horst and his family well, and he knew that his wife Elaine wasn't pregnant, so the child was a mystery to him. "I'll tell you about mine if you tell me about yours," spoke Horst as he pointed to the wrapped baby in Garo's arms. Garo was one of the few people Horst trusted enough to tell the truth about the baby to, even though Garo himself was a simple and somewhat narrow-minded man. He was still one of Horst's best friends and someone he knew would have his back regardless of how strange it was. Garo seemed to hesitate for a moment, which surprised Horst. It seemed that the child was a touchy subject to Garo right now, but it seemed that Garo was also very interested in the child his best friend had in his arms. "This is my sister Selena's son, Aragon," spoke Garo as he moved some of the wrapping to show the face of a newborn child no older than a week, with bright blue eyes and dark hair. His cheeks were full of baby fat, giving his face a round look. He looked so fragile and cute all at once. "Oh, Selena is back in Carvajal. I didn't know that," spoke Horst, but as soon as the words came out of his mouth he could see that they had an adverse effect on Garo, if the flinch was anything to go by. "She isn't exactly in Carvajal," spoke Garo as a look of both sadness and shame washed over him. Horst was really starting to feel bad for his friend. "So what, she just stopped by to say hi? Dropped off her newborn, and then left?" asked Horst as he looked at Garo with a shocked look. He never would have thought little Selena would be capable of such a thing back when she lived in Carvajal. But that was before she fell in love with the Morzan, so he figured anything was possible. "No, that's not it. Let me start from the beginning," spoke Garo as he began to recount how his sister had shown up on his doorstep on day out of the blue, 9 months with child, only to beg him after she gave birth with tears in her eyes to watch over him right before she left. Horst found it odd but didn't mention it as he comforted his friend. "So what is the story with your little one? I doubt his mother just dropped him off at your doorstep like mine," joked Garo, but there was sorrow in his voice that couldn't be hidden. "Also, why don't you have a shirt on?" "Not exactly," spoke Horst as he looked around. When he saw that the street that they were on was empty, he was sure they were safe and moved the cloth out of the way of the child's face, revealing his entire face along with his long pointed ears. Horst wasn't surprised to hear the gasp come from Garo. "At is that?" asked Garo as he got a closer look at the child. Its face was angular and smooth, the opposite of the round chubby face of his nephew's face. The ears were elongated and pointed instead of the usual rounded and wide ears that humans had. The baby opened his eyes and Garo gasped as he saw the golden eyes with the black slits in them for pupils. "I think he is a baby elf, or maybe a half-elf." That if found out in my cabin earlier when I went for wood, spoke Horst as he covered the baby's face back up so nobody accidentally saw him. He would need time to slowly introduce the boy to the community so people could get more used to seeing him. How in the world did you come into possession of a baby elf? Asked Garrow, his sadness at his sister's abandonment of her child all but evaporated in his curiosity. Well, it happened like this, spoke Horst as he recounted how he found baby Naruto and his mother in his cabin, about burying the mother and taking the child, about his plans on raising the boy as his own. Well, it looks like neither of us have it easy, do we? Though my sympathies go out to you when you tell Elaine about this new child, joked Garrow as he slg muscular back. That is true, she might just kill me where I stand, but anyways, could you do me a favor? Asked Horst as he looked down at Garrow with a small smile on his face. Anything, my friend, though I won't be He want to tell Elaine about your new elf child, spoke Garrow, who was in a much better mood than he had been earlier. Next time you talk to someone, could you mention the elves and try and put a better spin on them? Introducing him will be hard enough without the rumors flying around about how elves kidnap young children and such, spoke Horst as he shuddered a bit. It was cold out, but he didn't want to take back his shirt for fear of the baby getting too cold or something. He didn't know anything about raising an elven child, so this was kind of hit and miss for him right now. I promise, spoke Garrow as he turned around and started walking to his farm where his wife and son were waiting on him. He had gone into town to get some supplies and had taken Aragon with him for the hell of it, though now he was happy he did. Horst watched as Garrow walked way into the fast approaching night and then looked in the direction of his own home. It was a giant 2-story house that he had made himself using all of the skills he had acquired throughout his life. It was beautiful and was made even homelier by the fact that Horst had made it himself. On the second floor there was a balcony that extended from a tall window. Water spouts in the shape of gargoyles were all around. The doors and windows were framed by carvings of ravens, serpents, hearts, and vines. A big, curved staircase leads to the second floor. The walls are the color of honey. There is a fireplace, and at the top of the stair a long hallway. There is a kitchen and guest rooms as well. All in all, Horst was proud of it, though AF. Talking with Garrow, he was kind of dreading going home to tell his wife about his discovery. He didn't want her thinking he would love this new child more than their own children. Finally, when Horst got to his house, he took a deep breath and opened the door. The first thing he realized were that 2 fast-moving objects had clung to his legs like snakes and were squeezing them. When Horst looked down, he saw it was his 2 sons Albrecht and Baldur. Daddy's home, shouted Baldur as he hugged his father's giant leg. Daddy, what took you so long? Shouted Albrecht as he held onto his father's giant muscular leg. Oh dear, you're finally home. I was getting worried and was about to round up a posy to go look, but that was as far as Elaine got when she came out from the kitchen and saw our husband holding a bundle wrapped in her husband's shirt and other dirty cloths. She did notice her husband was shivering a bit and his skin was slightly blue, but nothing sitting beside their fireplace couldn't fix. Hey honey, hey kids, how was you guys' day? Asked Horst, trying to buy some time from the obvious questions that were forming in his wife's head. I shot a rabbit with my bow today, spoke Baldur as he puffed up his chest. Baldur was 2 years older than his 6-year-old brother, Albrecht, and was a great hunter. He already had some muscles starting to form and was a fair deal taller than normal children, thus leaving others to believe he would become a giant like his father. You did? That's great. I think I will need to make my big strong hunter man some new arrows, spoke Horst as he plopped down on the couch closest to the fireplace. He subtly moved the baby closer to the fire as well, just in case. Really? Hurry! Shouted Baldur as he started to jump up and down, pumping his fist up and down all the way. Hey, what about me? I shot a quail, spoke Albrecht as he crossed his arms with a pout on his face. He was the only boy in Carvajal that had blonde hair. Everyone else had brown or black hair besides his mother Elaine. Then you will need some new arrows as well, spoke Horst, trying to keep the mood as positive as possible. She shot a subtle look over at his wife to see her reaction. No good, she looked pissed off, and he knew she wouldn't stay quite forever, but so long as the kids were close she would kill him. Hooray! Shouted Albrecht as he started jumping up and D down beside his brother Baldur, pumping his fist up and down alongside him. Horst was about to continue talking to them, but it seemed Elaine wouldn't be ignored any longer. "Horst dear, what is that in your arms?" asked Elaine with a neutral voice. She didn't see why Horst was trying to hide it. It wasn't like she couldn't see, so what was the point? Was it his? Did he steal it? She just couldn't figure it out, and she wasn't about to be kept in the dark. "Oh, this, well, he is a baby," spoke Horst, trying to figure out the best way to tell her and their kids about just what kind of baby this was. "Gee, used that much, but where did you get it?" asked Elaine as she stared down at Horst. Even when he was sitting down, she was barely taller than him, so her looking down on him was a rarity. Indeed, by now, the kids had shut up, feeling the tension in the air. "Up in the cabin where I was going to chop some wood. There was a woman in the cabin with this little guy, but unfortunately the woman was already dead when I got there, so I only took the child with me," spoke Horst as he fumbled a bit with his large hands as he held the small child. He could feel the climax coming on quick and wasn't sure if Elaine was ready for it. "Oh, that's awful. What did you do with her? You were gone for a long time," spoke Elaine, feeling like something big was coming up, but she just couldn't figure it out. "I buried her in a clearing close to the cabin. I didn't think she would want to be buried in one of our graveyards. I felt she would have been happier in the forest than around a lot of other dead people," spoke Horst as he held the baby tightly in his arms. "Why would you think that? Did you know her?" asked Elaine, not getting what her husband was getting at. She could see he looked uneasy and felt herself getting uneasy. "Horst would never cheat on me," she kept repeating in her head. "Because she was an elf," spoke Horst as he waited for someone to say something. Silence was the only thing that permeated their house. His wife and children were shocked into complete silence as they stared at Horst with both shock and confusion. Elaine was used to her husband's love for fairy tales, and since he didn't go overboard with the subject, she just ignored it slightly, thinking it was cute. He still had such a childish side, but now she thought he had gone off the deep end. The two boys were shocked, thinking their father had finally found a magical creature like he had told them about all their lives. They had always believed he would find one and show them, but even though they had expected it, they were still shocked. "Dear, how do you know she was an elf? She could have just looked oddly because of hunger or some other cause," spoke Elaine, trying to recover from the mind-blowing info her husband had just put down. "Because of him," spoke Horst as he opened the wraps to reveal a completely naked little boy with perfect white skin, a lithe body, an angular face, elongated ears, and a faint glow about him. "Oh my gods," spoke Elaine as she looked at the child. This child was unlike anything she had ever seen. He was perfect, was the only way she could explain the way he looked. His skin was flawless, and air wasn't any of that baby fat other babies had. His golden blonde hair matched his beautiful golden eyes. The only thing about him she found odd was his eyes. Those slits were a bit scary to her, and she couldn't imagine what they would look like when he got older. "That's so cool," shouted Baldur as he ran up to his father and sat beside him to get a better look at the small baby in his father's hands. He hadn't ever seen someone who looked like in his entire life, and though he looked awesome. "Hey, let me see ta," shouted Albrecht as he climbed up the back of the couch to look over his father's shoulder to see the smiling face of the little baby. He could actually feel the happiness radiating off the child as he held onto one of Horst's fingers. "Is that really But that was as far as Elaine got as she looked down at the baby. Her heart melted a bit when he rose up one of his hands and started making grabbing motions towards of her while making slobber bubbles with his mouth. Elaine didn't know what compelled her, but she leaned down and picked up the baby and started to coo to him as she gently started swinging him back and forth in her arms. He was so cute, and that smiling face was just irresistible to Elaine. As she held him, she didn't want to put him down until she felt his little belly grumble a bit. "So what do you think we should do with him?" asked Horst, hoping she would say that they could keep him. He honestly didn't know where he would be able to leave the baby if she said they had to get rid of him. "We are going to keep him, honestly, Horst, you don't think sometimes?" spoke Elaine as she walked up the flight of stairs to start turning one of the guest rooms into her new baby's room. "What are we going to name him?" asked Horst with a smile on his face. "Naruto," was all she said as she disappeared up the stairs. Naruto. Ha, I guess she does listen to my fairy tales every now and then, spoke Horst as he leaned back and started to talk to his children about what elves were and what they did. It was cold and the sun had just begun to peek its head out from behind the spine. The snow that clung to the forest and ground radiated beauty that permeated the spine as well as a haunting chill. Only small green leaves poking out of the snow could be seen other than the brown of the bark of trees. The forest was unnaturally silent, like someone holding their breath waiting for something to happen. The feeling was lost to the buck grazing on what little green in the snow it could find, but not to the two others who hid in the bushes getting ready to strike. Naruto had grown up much in the past 16 years. He had come to love his adoptive family like they were his real family. Naruto had always been a very smart child and knew instantly that they were not his biological family, but soon accepted them to be the family of his heart. Naruto had gotten taller as well as a bit more muscular. His lithe frame gave him a sleek look, but nobody could deny the muscle he had from working in his father's forge, though the part Aragon was jealous of was how cut he was. His muscles weren't excessively large or anything and he still had a lithe frame, but the definition the muscle had was amazing. His face had become even more handsome as well as angular the older he got and his eyes became a bit more slanted. The most noticeable feature though, Naruto's ears, were long and pointed, which was the most obvious part of his body that others noticed. Naruto had gotten his ears pierced when he was younger, so now he had 2 black studs in his ears. Naruto wore ice clothing consisting of a dark green tunic with black leather riding pants and dark brown rider boots. He had a brown leather belt on his hip that he usually attached tools for blacksmithing, but now he was using it to hold his quiver in place. On Naruto's hands were brown gloves that didn't have any fingers in them to keep Naruto's thin fingers agile. Naruto and his best friend Aragon were hiding behind a bush stalking said deer. They had been doing so for the past few days and had varying luck catching up with it. Naruto had decided to go with Aragon so that he would have something interesting to do since his father had been training his 2 brothers extensively for when they left to find jobs in surrounding towns, so he really didn't have much to do besides help his mother do housework. When Aragon had come by to tell him that he was going hunting, Naruto had asked to join him immediately. The hunt wasn't that bad. Naruto hadn't ever had the same difficulties that others had well anything, but he never liked holding it above others' heads and had kept it to a minimum so as to not be seen as even more different. He had gone at Aragon's speed and had enjoyed the conversation as well as the thrill of the hunt. Now that they were here, ready to strike, his heart was beating extra fast as he could feel the climax of the hunt approaching. "I bet my arrow kills him," read Naruto as he looked over at his friend. Usually Aragon was so relaxed and somewhat silly, but now when his food supply was on the line he was serious and had a deadly look in his eyes, though he did smile. "I'll take that bet," spoke Aragon as he strung his arrow and pulled back his bow. He aimed it at the deer with deadly precision and waited for Naruto to do the same. Naruto's strength had caused him a problem when he first started hunting, like it had done everything else. No matter what kind of wooden bow his father would make or buy, it would always break in Naruto's hand like a brittle stick. His father had spent days thinking about the problems and had eventually come to a solution. If wood was too weak he would use something stronger, and since he was a blacksmith, metal was the best option. He spent weeks perfecting the method until finally he was able to make Naruto a steel recurve bow that could handle his strength if he wasn't too rough with it. It had worked great, and Naruto could pull the metal bow back as far as he wanted and the braided metal wire string wouldn't break either. He had been excited to use it as soon as his father had gotten it right, but then he ran into another problem. None of the wooden arrows could handle the power the metal bow put out and would shatter and splinter when he would release them. His father wasn't even bothered in the slightest. Situally he seemed thrilled at the challenge, and set out to make Naruto some metal arrows. They worked like a charm, but the downside was they were expensive and time-consuming to make, so if he shot an arrow he would always have to go find it and fix it if it were damaged. Both Aragon and Naruto lined up their sights and aimed at the buck. The buck lifted its head, probably sensing the tension in the air. But it was too late as Naruto and Aragon let their arrows go flying. The unexpected happened though, as the arrows from their bows A large explosion in between them and the buck caused the BUCK to become startled and Aragon to hesitate, causing the arrow to go off track. Unfortunately for the buck though, Naruto wasn't as easily startled and hit his target dead on. "What the hell was that?" shouted Aragon as he stood up and looked into the burnt area that the explosion had caused. Sitting there in the center were two beautiful round objects, both of which caused Naruto and Aragon to marvel. There, sitting in the center of the charred earth, were two large stones, one a beautiful sapphire blue, and another a breathtaking emerald green. They both had thin white veins spread across them that had no real pattern. At the same time, almost like they were being drawn in, Naruto and Aragon bent down and picked them up. Naruto picked up the emerald stone and Aragon picked up the sapphire stone. "What are they?" asked Aragon as he looked at the sapphire stone. It was huge in his opinion and it took both hands for him to keep it up. "I don't know. I would say giant emerald and sapphires haven't been cut yet, but I haven't ever heard of them looking like this, and they are not near as heavy as that much crystal. I honestly wouldn't know what they were," spoke Naruto as he examined the stone. He held it up into the sunlight and could see that there was something inside of it, but figured it was kind of like how sap Inca's mosquitoes. And didn't think much of it. Maybe the traders will know something. "Well, I hope it is worth something, because without that deer my family isn't going to have enough meat for the winter and we don't have enough to buy any," spoke Aragon with a depressed voice. Naruto just rolled his eyes. Aragon and his family wouldn't go hungry. Naruto's father would see to that. But if it did come to that, Aragon would have to deal with his Uncle Garo's broken pride. Naruto loved the man, but there were some things that were trying to deal with when around the man, and his pride and worry about it. "Even if you missed, I know I didn't," spoke Naruto as he pointed at the dead buck lying on the ground not far away. Aragon seemed to light but then got depressed again. "Yay, but you're the one that killed it, not me, so that makes the deer yours." Aragon went back to examining the strange stone, hoping that it was worth something, when he got smacked upside the head by Naruto. "Don't worry about it. My brothers all started working and are bringing in plenty of money. We won't go hungry, I assure you. You can have the deer, just don't tell Garo you weren't the one that killed it and we will be fine," spoke Naruto as he put his stone in the satchel that he wore on his back. He had to rearrange all the things in there like his camping equipment, but other than that he was golden. "Are you sure?" asked Aragon as he looked over at Naruto. He had walked over to the tree that his arrow had hit and was retrieving it. It might not have been made of metal, but it was still a pain in the ass to make another one. "I wouldn't have said anything if I weren't. Besides, it's not like Garo will be happy that you didn't bring any meat for the winter, and if you don't get back to town soon then you won't be able to give Katrina that letter," joked Naruto as he went over and took his arrow out of the deer. After cleaning off his arrow and putting it in his quiver, he kneeled down and picked up the deer and started walking towards town. "I'm never going to be able to get over all the things you can do," spoke Aragon as he watched Naruto carry the large deer on his shoulder like it wasn't even worth mentioning. Ever since they were little, Naruto had always been so fast and strong that it almost seemed unreal, but then again, if the stories he had heard from Horst and Braum were anything to go by, he really shouldn't be surprised. Horst was waiting for his son out by the forges. In the past 16 years Naruto had done nothing but bring happiness to their family. It was odd at first, since they didn't know if elves were allergic to anything or any other requirement they may have in order to live, but soon they realized that elves were much more durable than even they themselves. When Naruto was 3 years only, he accidentally got in the way of his brothers while they were wrestling. They fell on Naruto, but to their shock and to their parents, Naruto was able to lift both of them up and wasn't even slightly hurt. Soon over the years it became obvious that Naruto was not only stronger, but faster, more durable, had way better stamina, and healed much faster than they could have thought possible. Another great thing that they learned about Naruto was he was a natural when it came to metal working. They didn't know if it were an elf thing or if it was just a personal skill, but Naruto learned to forge with ease that astounded them. They were happy when Naruto made friends besides with his two brothers, because honestly they were worried he might be a social outcast. His features and the stories about elves were really against him, but he quickly made friends with Aragon and Roran, which was a relief. "Dear, it is cold out here. If you wait for Naruto forever you'll catch a cold," spoke Elaine, Horst's wife, as she stepped outside and looked at her husband with a smile on her face. She loved that her husband had brought Naruto into their lives, and she loved how he loved all of their children the same amount. I know, but he told us he would be coming back today. He never makes us wait for him, spoke Horst as he looked up at the spine with a worried look. Maybe I should go looking for him. He could have gotten hurt or lost his way. Lane smiled, knowing how much of a worrywart Horst could be when it came to Naruto. It was like he always assumed he was fragile just because of the way he looked, when in reality he knew that Naruto was many times stronger than him. Honey, it is early. Give him some time before you go running through the spine. You and I both know that if anyone can survive up there, it is Naruto, spoke Elaine as Shish walked up behind Horst and wrapped her arms around his waist. He gave him a warm wet kiss on his cheek, though it was difficult because of how tall he was. Yeah, I guess, but that was as far as he got when they bother heard, "Hey Mom." "Hey Dad," coming from up the road. When they turned around, they saw Naruto walking towards them. They were so happy to see he was alive and well. Their happiness was eviscerated by the sight of blood on the top of Naruto's right shoulder, as well as their curiosity regarding the stone he had in his left hand. They did notice that Naruto had his metal bow strapped around his shoulder though, and he had his metal arrows as well. "Honey, what happened to you?" asked Elaine as she ran up to Naruto and started to fret over him. Naruto just smiled and let her do as she pleased, as there was no stopping her when she was in mom mode. "It's nothing, I just carried the deer that we killed down the mountainside, and I guess it bleed out on me, but that isn't the real interesting news. Check this out," spoke Naruto as he held up the stone for his mother and father to see. "What is it?" asked Horst as he took the stone from his son. It was odd looking. It looked like emerald lodged in stone that hadn't been purified yet, but then again it didn't. "I don't know. I was hoping you could tell me, Dad," spoke Naruto as he looked at his dad with anxious eyes. He really wanted to know what it was, and if it had a connection to magic, something else we're supposed to be able to use. "I'm not sure. I haven't ever seen anything like this before. Let me go get my tools so I can examine it better," spoke Horst as he hugged his son and walked back into the house to find his tools. The stone interested him greatly and he wanted to see what it had in it. When they were all alone, Elaine pulled Naruto into a warm hug, which Naruto returned full-heartedly. "I am so happy you're safe, Naruto," spoke Elaine as she walked towards the house. "Dinner is ready," spoke Elaine as an afterthought. "All right," shouted Naruto as he walked over to the forges where his brother Baldur was hammering away at a piece of metal. It looked like it was going to be a horseshoe when he was done, but it would still be some time before that happened. "What's happening, big bro?" asked Naruto as he sat on the other side of the forge to keep away from the flying pieces of burning metal that his brother was knocking into the air. "Hey, how was the hunt?" asked Baldur as he put the horseshoe into some water, casing steam to rise up. He was using giant metal tongs so he didn't destroy his hands in a giant apron that Naruto used to make fun of him for wearing, until he started to have to wear it. "Pretty good. I was able to kill a large buck, but gave it to Aragon and told him not to tell Garo it was me who killed it. Honestly, if I was going to starve, I don't think I would be so picky about where my next meal came from," spoke Naruto as he rested his back against his chair before taking a deep breath and standing up. "Not everyone is like you, little bro. Some people would rather die than to lose their pride, no matter how petty others see it. You have to remember Garo is poor and doesn't like to be reminded about it, so when he sees something as charity he kind of freaks out. It was wise of you to tell Aragon not to tell his uncle," spoke Baldur as he watched his brother stand up and heat up his OWN small forge that him and his brother had used when they were smaller. Naruto had been using it to make a new sword that he said would be much better for someone who was fighting one-on-one. "Yeah, I figured that, but it was still annoying having to tiptoe around Garo," spoke Naruto as he pulled out a long curved piece of metal that he had been working on for the past 2 days. He called it a katana, and he was making it by pounding metal flat, then folding it and then repeating the process. "Yeah, but you will learn that there are things in this life that we have to deal with even though we don't like it. Tiptoeing around Garo is worth it because he is a good friend who would die taking a few extra steps to save his pride isn't such a big deal. Anyways, what's got Pops all uppity?" asked Baldur as he watched. Naruto continued to hammer the weird sword that he had been developing. Oh yeah, me and Aragon found these weird stones in the spine, but we had no idea what they were and decided to take them home with us. Aragon took the big blue one and I took the big green one. I wanted to show Dad what it if found, and now it seems he is on a quest to figure it out, spoke Naruto as he watched the coals get hot enough to melt steel. Maybe it is a new type of metal. If that were the case, then you could use it to make your new sword, spoke Baldur as he went back to making the horseshoes. I hadn't thought about it like that. But yay, if it is some new kind of metal, then I guess I could always melt it down and see what happens, spoke Naruto as he went back to forging his new weapon. He didn't have any swordsman training since nobody from their village had been in the king's army, but he still wanted to make a weapon, so that was what he had set out to do. That night during dinner, RST came back into the room and handed Naruto the stone. Naruto looked up at him inquisitively as he could tell his father was both confused and interested. I have no idea what it is. I have tried to identify it, but nothing I know of matches it, but I will tell you two things that I learned about it, spoke Horst as he sat down and began piling food onto his plate. And they would be trailed off. Naruto, hoping that his father wouldn't play no long guessing game. He was far too interested in figuring out just what the green stone was. The first thing I discovered was it is hollow, spoke Horst, as he cut a slab of ham off of the roasted pig that was in the center of their table. He used a large spoon and slapped the top of the stone, causing a loud yet hollow sound. The second thing I discovered is that it is hard. I couldn't even scratch the damn thing, and I figure it might be even harder than diamonds, but I can't be sure, spoke Horst as he continued to pile on more food. How could it be harder than diamonds? I thought diamonds were the hardest substance in the world, spoke Naruto as he looked at the stone in his lap, trying to figure out what was going on. I thought so as well, but maybe we were wrong. I'll take it to the traders when they come here and ask them about it, see if they know anything, spoke Horst as he took a big bite out of a biscuit Elaine had made for them. Why can't I go talk to the traders? I never get to, spoke Naruto with a sad tone to his voice. Out of everything that he could and was allowed to do, going to see the traders was not one of them. Naruto, dear, you know why you can't see the traders? What if they find out you're half-elf? They will surely tell others, and by the end of the month Galbatorix and his soldiers will be marching over the spine try and capture you, spoke Elaine in a soft, soothing tone that still had finality to it. But I promise I will wear a wrap or a hood or something to make sure none of the traders find out I am part elf, spoke Naruto in a pleading tone. He really wanted to go to see the traders. They were the only form of entertainment their small village got each year, and he was forced to stay hidden while they were here, only to hear about how amazing it was year after year from everyone else. It was miserable and he hated it. I am sorry, Naruto, but this is final. Until it is safe for elves to live in the Empire, you're just going to have to bear with it, spoke Horst as he looked up only to see the sad look in his son's face. I really am sorry, Naruto. It is okay, spoke Naruto as he wiped his face and stood up. I think I am going to go lie down for a bit, spoke Naruto as he walked out of the kitchen and up to his bedroom. When Naruto made it to his room, he lay down and stared up at the ceiling with sad eyes. Well, it looks like another year staying at home just to wish I was somewhere else, spoke Naruto as he fell asleep. As Naruto was sleeping, he kept on hearing a strange sound. It was bothering him because it was already so hard for him to sleep as it was. He gave up trying to ignore whatever it was that was bothering him and cracked open his eye and looked around the room. He didn't see anything, but then that sound kept on repeating, so Naruto kept on looking. After the last squeak, he followed the sound with his heightened hearing and noticed that it came from the stone. What the hell? Spoke Naruto as he looked at the egg. It was bouncing around, making all kinds of squeaking sounds as it hopped around, looking like a Mexican jumping bean. Naruto watched it with awe as hairline acts started to form all around the stone. Not a stone, an egg, thought Naruto as he corrected himself. He wondered just what kind of creature came out of an egg that big. Well, I am not sure how my biological mother had me. For all I know, elves could be born from eggs, thought Naruto as he looked down at the jumping egg as it continued to crack. He certainly wasn't ready to be no dad, that was for sure. Eventually an ear-splitting squeak filled the room and the egg all but blew up, sending bits and pieces of the egg in all directions. Naruto had to shield his eyes to make sure they were not UGED out thanks to the incoming projectiles. Well, if this is how elves are born, then I feel bad for all elven parents, joked Naruto as he looked down where the egg used to be, only to gasp at what he saw. Standing there was a beautiful emerald-colored lizard with the most beautiful glowing neon green eyes he had ever seen, but oddly it had 2 wings. Wait a second, wings? That isn't a lizard, duh. She's a dragon, spoke Naruto as he looked at the baby dragon with wonder. I thought the king was the last rider, thought Naruto as he looked down at the baby dragon. The baby dragon waddled around King used to walking on all 4 feet as it looked around his room. It bit into the side of his bedpost a few times before getting bored with that and looking for something else to entertain itself. You're kind of destructive, you know that, spoke Naruto as he watched the baby dragon chew on his bedpost. The dragon looked up at him with interested eyes and started to walk towards him. When it to the edge of his bed, it raised its head up and gave him the cutest look. I swear if you bite me I am going to be having deep-fried lizard by the end of the night, spoke Naruto as he reached down with his left hand, tentatively not wanting to lose a finger, and touched the snout of the dragon with the center of his palm. It was the most painful experience he had ever been forced to endure, as Chi felt like ice water was poured into his veins and rushed through his entire body. Naruto fell back on his ass as he lost the feeling in his legs. The searing pain running through every fiber in his body wasn't helping, and the silver marking on his hand that was itching wasn't either. When I recover you're so dead, spoke Naruto as he slowly stood up, scratching the weird marking on his hand that felt like a spider bite. As he looked down at the dragon he felt something brush against his own mind. It was an odd sensation, but oddly he felt he was almost expecting it and reached out and felt the dragon's mind. He wasn't very good at it and could only feel what it was feeling. You're hungry, spoke Naruto with a less than annoyed look. The dragon seemed to understand him and made another high-pitched noise. So much for that novelty moment, thought Naruto as he went down to the kitchen and got a handful of meat before walking back up to his room. He slowly fed his new baby dragon bits of meat that it snapped up and swallowed whole. Hey, you take one of my fingers, I gonna end you, spoke Naruto as he fed the dragon another piece of meat. The dragon growled a bit, but other than that ignored Naruto. Man, I am a half-elf living in the Empire and now I am stuck with a dragon. I am so screwed, spoke Naruto more to himself than to anyone else, but the dragon made a burping sound that almost sounded like it was agreeing with him. The sleepy look on ally cute, so he figured he would ignore it. After that Naruto gathered the pieces of its shell and put them in a bag beside his bed. What if? I will deal with this in the morning, spoke Naruto as he laid in his bed and pulled up his blanket. The dragon jumped up and glided onto his bed and started to crawl around. Geez, could you just let me sleep a bit? You're like an annoying alarm clock that won't let me sleep, spoke Naruto. The dragon growled a bit more but then made its way to Naruto's side and curled up. Naruto didn't know why he did it, but he grabbed the dragon and pulled it in closer to him so it would be able to absorb the maximum amount of his body heat. The baby dragon made a weird purring sound that sounded almost like a cat, but Naruto ignored it. He was tired and still had some pain lancing up from his hand, so he just wanted to sleep it away. When Naruto opened up his eyes, the world had changed for him. Now everything had a ting of green in it and it wasn't as clear as before. Naruto squinted his eyes trying to figure out what was going on when he saw small bones with veins running across his vision. Damn it, spoke Naruto as he looked over and saw that the baby dragon's wing had landed on his face, causing him to see through the translucent wings that were tinged green like the rest of its body. He really didn't know what to do with it. He could always keep it in his room, but he could tell that even after one night it had gotten bigger. Keeping it in his room wouldn't work, and when it got bigger he'd only have a harder time trying to hide it. Where could I keep you that is both safe and convenient for me? It would also have to be a place where nobody else goes, spoke Naruto, but then he snapped his finger. That's it. I'll take you to the place my dad found me, spoke Naruto as he looked down at the dragon, but first you're gonna have to get a bit bigger so you can defend yourself. The An looked at him with those big cute eyes and Naruto's heart melted a bit. He really didn't want the dragon to be away from him even if it kind of pissed him off from time to time, but still he felt a connection to it. For the next 2 weeks Naruto watched over the baby dragon and also watched as it grew. The dragon was ravenous and its hunger seemed to never end, but with a successful kill a week ago he had been able to keep it fed and his family unaware. After a month of raising it in secret he moved it to the cabin in which he was found. The dragon would have everything it could possibly need. It had some food until Naruto could resupply it, blankets, shelter, and even company. It seemed that blue stone was a dragon egg as well and it hatched for Aragon around the same time as the green egg hatched for Naruto. Naruto had agreed to let Aragon use the cabin with him since he figured the dragons would enjoy the company, though he really hoped they didn't try and kill one another over territory or something like that. When all was said and done Naruto was standing before a young oak tree with a smile on his face. This was where his mother had been buried and this tree had grown from her. In a way this tree was his mother, though he knew that she really wasn't. "Hey mom, guess what? I found a dragon egg and it hatched for me. I hope you would be proud and I love you," spoke Naruto as he leaned forward and kissed the tree before leaving to go back to the family of his heart. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.